Today, I will discuss the types of competition in SSEMI 3B in terms of the number of sellers, the barriers to entry, price control, and product differentiation. After you have discussed supply and demand with students and played the classroom market and oil simulation, or cocoa or wheat, ask students to think like a consumer and brainstorm what happens to consumers when the number of sellers decreases. Prompt them if needed by providing hints such as, what about customer service, efficiency, etc.? Likely answers: the remaining producers will act like the stereotypical cable company or the Department of Motor Vehicles. Now, ask students to think like a producer. How could they raise their price and consumers still buy the product? That is, how could they earn more profit? They should say, make the product better, improve the quality, or perhaps get other firms to leave the industry or block other businesses from entering. Now tell students you're going to play the market in oil again, but with a change. Ask for 4 volunteers who want to be sellers. You could also ask the 4 most profitable sellers to volunteer. Either way, have your 4 sellers step into the hallway. Have them draw a seller's card from the classroom market in oil, or cocoa or wheat, which will represent their cost of production. They will keep this card for the whole round, making as many transactions as possible and recording their gains and losses. Leave them in the hallway for a moment and go back to the rest of your class, who are now all buyers. Deal a buyer card to each buyer and instruct them that they will get a new card from you after each transaction. Tell them to keep track of the transactions. Explain that the round will be 3 minutes, same as before, but the sellers will be in each corner of the room. Bring the sellers in and give them time to reach their 4 corners. Start the time and let the round begin. After the round ends, collect all cards and instruct students to calculate gain and loss. Send the sellers back into the hallway. Deal new buyer cards to the buyers and then go out to the sellers. Have them each draw a new seller's card. Tell them they will be in the middle of the room this time, shoulder to shoulder, facing the buyers. Tell them this should facilitate their communication. Go back inside and tell buyers where the sellers will be. Bring the sellers into the room and begin the second round of 3 minutes. The buyers may not get out of their seats initially. If need be, I tell them they will take a loss of the face value of their card if they do not make at least 1 transaction. Usually the agreements on price will be broken. When the round ends, collect all cards and have students calculate the gains and losses. Debriefing. Let the discussion flow. There will be accusations of cheating and/or fraud because agreements were broken. Focus on price differences first between the first time you played this or a similar game in your classroom and round 1 today. Ask what happened to price. It rose because there were fewer sellers. Then, in the second round today, what happened to price? It usually rises again because sellers have an easier time of colluding. Now, inquire about the cheating accusations and make sure the class hears why agreements were broken. They may say greed, money, etc., but be sure to say to increase profit so students understand. Ask students what happened to their profit when another seller broke the agreement. Usually they will report that their profit was not as high as it could have been. Explain that this is interdependence. When your profits depend on another seller's choices, that is interdependence. Ask students if there were incentives to keep or break agreements. Ask students what type of competition this illustrated. Explain that it is oligopoly. Explain the roots of the word, that is, O-L-I-G, olig, means few. Now ask students about the second round. Expand discussion to how many options buyers had in the round when all four sellers stuck to their agreement. If there was only one option for buyers, then a monopoly was operating. When the sellers broke the agreement, back to oligopoly. Graph what happens when the number of sellers decreases. Remind students that this is a determinant of supply. Therefore, supply decreases and equilibrium price rises while equilibrium quantity decreases. Now, time to introduce the other types of markets by discussing the criteria. Remember that markets or industries are composed of producers all offering the same or close to the same good or service. The term seller is synonymous with business, producer, or firm. First, get students thinking by asking them to name markets or industries that have barriers to entry, that is, where it is difficult to enter and produce. Also, ask for examples of markets where it is relatively easy to enter and compete. Now ask them to name markets where there are very few sellers, and those that have many sellers. Now discuss price control by asking them for examples of markets where prices tend to stay high. Product differentiation. Explain this is where producers try to make their product unique by changing features of it. They may use advertising to convince consumers. Ask students for examples of markets where the products are very similar and those where they are very distinct. Now, let's rank them by comparing and contrasting. Here is a blank chart, and here it is completed. Have students write down this chart in their notes. Explain. Barriers to entry cause there to be differences in pricing. When it is difficult to enter and compete in an industry, that means production requires lots of capital goods, technology, and/or skilled labor. Supply is inelastic. The Georgia Standards of Excellence do not require students to know elasticity of supply. This is for you, the teacher. For pure competition and monopolistic competition, it is relatively easy to enter and compete, so I shaded these columns green for you, whereas oligopoly and monopoly have many barriers to entry, so I shaded them orange. The number of sellers is somewhat related to barriers to entry. When there are fewer barriers to entry, industries have more sellers. In oligopolies, a few sellers control most of the market. That is, 5 to 7 firms dominate. They may have over 70% of the market share, with other smaller firms making up the rest of the market. Products are standardized in pure competition. Each piece of printer paper is the same if I am buying 24-pound paper of a certain brightness. In agriculture, crops are rated based on quality. Within that class of product, all corn is the same, for example. In monopolistic competition, firms try to make their products different, so we, the consumer, will pay more for the quality improvements instead of buying because it's the cheapest. This is non-price competition. This is why, in monopolistic competition, firms have some price control, but in perfect or pure competition, they have none. When we all sell the same standardized product, if I raise my price, I will lose all sales. I am already able to sell all that I want at the market price, so I have no reason to drop my price. The smaller the number of sellers and the more barriers to entry exist, the more price control there is. The key characteristics. For pure competition, we all sell standardized products, so the market sets the price and each individual seller is too small to influence the market. They have no price control. Monopolistic competition is a mix of pure competition and monopolies, where producers differentiate their products based on quality, so we will pay more. This is non-price competition. Oligopolies have barriers to entry and price control because there are a few firms that can dominate the market. This causes interdependence and encourages collusion, which is illegal in the United States. Monopolies are when there is one seller, such as the electric company. There may be geographic monopolies where there is only one hospital, or one doctor, or one grocery store, for example. Examples: for pure competition, agricultural products and printer paper. For monopolistic competition, makeup, shampoos, razors, restaurants, clothes. For oligopolies, OPEC is the most common example worldwide. Also, cell phones and cell phone service providers. For monopolies, utilities. Also, there may be near monopolies where one firm controls 80% or more of a market, such as Microsoft Windows operating system. Here's the chart again, and another blank chart. Realize that markets may change between oligopolies and monopolistic competition, for example, as new companies enter or horizontal mergers occur, such as Southwest Airlines merging with AirTran. Economists use numerical calculations to distinguish whether an industry is an oligopoly or a monopolistic competitor. A variation is to have students research their favorite ads for products and then analyze what makes an effective ad. This will make students more aware of how producers attempt to sway them. Discuss why prices are never in whole dollar amounts and what ads leave unmentioned. Here are the sources. A good movie that illustrates the difficulties one man faced trying to enter and compete with the big three automakers is Tucker. Annenberg's The Economics Classroom is fabulous. Good luck and have fun teaching the types of competition.